This thing is quick. Hyundai IONIQ 5 and Kia EV6. Is there another more fantastic dynamic duo than these two South Korean electric cars? I believe not. While Toyota is having issues with wheels falling off on its BZ4X electric crossover, and Honda, well, still doesn't have anything electric in its lineup, the South Koreans are coming out with two third-generation EVs. And they're both fantastic. They have a lot of range, a lot of performance, a lot of styling, and a lot of technology. Now, the question is, which one do you prefer? The retro modern IONIQ 5 that looks like an 80s car that was pixelated into the future, or the more sophisticated and futuristic EV6? Up to you to choose your poison. No matter which one you're going to choose, you're going to make a fantastic purchase with one of these South Korean electric vehicles. I personally prefer the look of the IONIQ 5, but this EV6 isn't very ugly neither. Technically, these vehicles are identical. They offer the same battery, the same range, the same performance, and the same charging speed, but they are kind of different in the areas that matter. Styling, yes, but the interior is a bit different. The ergonomics are not the same, and the way things are generally laid out in the vehicle are quite unique to the EV6. And if you're wondering why I'm wearing this silly green shirt, well, that's because the production team figured that it wanted to play with some of its special effects. I'm not sure this is looking really good right now. Now, some of the styling distinctions with the EV6 are immediately apparent in the rear. Not only does it have a pretty cool spoiler that protrudes on the sides, this is an interesting touch. You probably noticed how slanted the rear window is compared to the IONIQ 5. Now, why am I talking about this window? Well, the main comment that I've been receiving about these cars is that they don't come fitted with a rear wiper. You probably read about that online. People have been complaining. And yes, in the IONIQ 5, it's a big problem because the window is like this. So the moment that it starts raining or snowing, the window gets dirty in the back and you really can't see anything. Especially if the backup camera is also dirty, well, you're screwed. You can't really see behind the car except for the side mirrors. It's not necessarily a problem with the EV6. Yes, it still doesn't have a wiper, but because the window is a lot more slanted, this is more of a fastback configuration. I drove this car during a snowstorm, and honestly, the lack of a rear wiper wasn't much of an issue. So this is a good example of the styling traits you're going to get in the EV6. Another cool design trait that I like is the charging port. Right here, you press on it, and it electronically opens like so. You have access to your charging port, and when you want to close it, you just press this button right here and it electronically closes once more. I have to be honest, I'm really impressed with what Kia and Hyundai have been doing with their latest electric vehicles. And honestly, no matter which one you're going to choose, you're going to be in good hands. They drive so well. And on top of being quick off the line and well built, there's actually some chassis calibration in their handling. I'm entering a corner right now with this thing. It's very flat, but it's also communicative. Yes, the steering wheel is dead. I mean, it's an electric car. I don't expect that thing to react like a gasoline-powered BMW, but I can eat up the road very quickly. And that's what I like about EVs. Their platforms are so solid, they don't have a choice because of sound insulation and the fact that there's so much torque from these electric motors that the platform has to be way more rigid than a normal gasoline car. I have different drive modes as well, and that's also something that Hyundai and Kia do very well. When I press this button here on my steering wheel, if I go in sport mode, not only do I get a nice red animations in the instrument cluster, when I floor it, this thing is quick. Now, the model I'm driving is the what I consider the sweet spot in the lineup. It's a dual motor all-wheel drive, so what Kia calls the long range model, but it's the base version of that specification, meaning I don't have any superficial accessories. I don't have a sunroof. The wheels look normal on the outside. I don't have the whole aero package of a GT line example, for instance, but I'm getting a total of 326 horsepower, 446 foot-pounds of torque combined from these two electric motors. So when I punch it, it really has a lot of power and torque. And range is rated by Kia at 440 kilometers. So I find it to be a good configuration for a place like here in Canada where we have winters. You're still going to get a decent amount of range, but you're also going to get the traction that you want from an all-wheel drive vehicle. Of course, the EV6 is also available in a rear-wheel drive configuration. This with the large battery, you're going to be getting almost 500 kilometers of range. That's EPA rated. And the base model, the small one, has a 58 kilowatt hour battery, which is a bit smaller compared to this one, which is a 77 kilowatt hour battery. That small one with the 58 kilowatt battery will get you about 386 kilometers of range, and it's only available in rear-wheel drive. Another feature I like about the EV6 is its charging performance. You probably remember the review I did of the Volkswagen ID4 on this channel a few weeks back. I was talking about how its charging speed was only fine because it was limited to 135 kilowatts. This thing, 350 kilowatts. That's as much as a Porsche Taycan and more than some Tesla. So again, the South Koreans are not only coming out with a quick and well-designed electric car, they're coming out with something that's technologically more advanced than the competition. And it's not as if Kia is asking that much more for this model. Pricing here in Canada will range between $45,000 and $60,000 when you take a full-spec GT Line 2 model. And what's great in an area like here in the province of Quebec that is heavily subsidized is you get a $12,000 rebate on the final price, no matter which model you take. So this makes it somewhat affordable, and although it's not as spacious and doesn't offer as much cargo space as the ID4 from Volkswagen, it's a considerably more advanced product. It also looks and feels just downright cool. I like the seating position. I like the visibility from this massive windshield. This is a big car, just like the IONIQ 5, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it from behind the wheel. Now, if I go back in its more economical eco mode, again, the instrument cluster changes into something a bit more friendly, a bit more eco-responsible. And I don't necessarily have a gauge cluster. I have what appears to be some kind of wings with thrusting animations. And what you're noticing from this gauge pod is that you don't really need gauges in an electric car anymore. You can put whatever you want. I just like this creativity from the South Koreans. I like how they dare to make a product that looks and feels different than everything else on the road. Okay, some things in the styling look a bit off, like this steering wheel is absolutely outrageous. Just one of the ugliest steering wheels I've seen in my life. But I do find that the EV6's cabin has a more a sportier feel. It doesn't look as much like a lounge like in the IONIQ 5. It has a bit more dynamic flair to it all. And that's because this vehicle was designed by Karim Habib. Karim is of Lebanese descent, but grew up in Montreal, like me, and he's got a pretty cool resume. I mean, he worked at BMW a few years back and designed the BMW 7 Series. Then he went to Infiniti and drew the QX50, which, although the QX50 is not a very competitive vehicle in its category, it looks really good. And now he's at Kia, and he wanted to give the EV6 a completely different look and feel than the IONIQ 5 on which it's based. He calls this styling where opposites unite. And it really is what it looks like. It looks like a mashup of shapes that are put together and somehow make the vehicle look good. But of course, what you guys want to know is how much the EV6 distinguishes itself from its corporate cousin, especially in the interior and the technology. So I'm going to pull over, I'm going to fiddle with all the toys and show you everything you'll get in a Kia EV6. So the EV6 is a bit more than just a different body on the same car as the IONIQ 5. There are some neat cues in its interior that allow it to distinguish itself from its cousin. For instance, this massive center console. Now, the IONIQ 5 doesn't have this. Both vehicles really maximize the amount of space that's available up here because obviously you don't have a transmission or an engine behind the firewall, so they were able to give it a lot more storage space. On the bottom, a massive compartment. I can just throw my junk in it. I have a total of 3 USB ports here in the front and a 12-volt plug as well for accessories. Now, this console also incorporates a wireless charging tray for my phone right here. I find that very neat. It just nestles comfortably here in the center, but you still have access to a deep center console. So again, a lot more storage right here. two cup holders, tiny little compartment behind the cup holder. So you're not missing out on storage solutions with the EV6. And you also have some tiny little pockets in the door. So you can really throw your stuff all over the cabin in here, and there's always a lot of space. Now the power button to turn the vehicle on is right here. My model is equipped with heated seats and steering wheel. The controls for that are right here in the front of that console. And finally, this gigantic knob dial. This is for a simulated transmission. There's no transmission on an electric car, but it's my park, neutral, and drive. And the drive modes, well, they're right here on the steering wheel. I'll just press here and I'll alternate between eco, normal, and sport. Now, one feature I find a bit annoying in the EV6 is its very odd climate control and audio controls. Everything is manageable in this thin layer right here. And what this pad will do is both act as climate control settings, but also for the audio settings. So by default, it's for climate control. This is standard stuff. These buttons here will regulate the heat, and then you can play with the fan speed right there, and you turn it on or off with the power button. But if I want to have access to audio controls, I need to press the little tiny arrow right here. Why? Probably for cost cutting. So by pressing the arrow, as you can see, the entire menu changes, and now I have access to audio controls. I am still left with some basic climate control settings, however, like auto climate or rear and front defroster. It's not so bad. I mean, this is kind of a cool feature when you discover it, but when you're driving, it does require an extra step to access, for instance, your radio controls. However, luckily, audio controls are also right here on the steering wheel. So Kia's logic behind it is that most of the time it's the driver who's going to control what's happening with the sound or the music or whatever, and they can control that from their steering wheel. These controls work super well. However, I still find that this is kind of a gimmick. And then there's the whole dashboard layout. Like in the IONIQ 5, it's just one giant tablet. It's very Mercedes-like. What's interesting is that just a few years back, Mercedes was all the talk with its gigantic screen layout, and here we are in a Kia that has it as well. The Koreans have been doing a really good job with screensavers lately. It's the same story here. So by default, I have a nice, pretty screensaver of the car that shows me its range left. And in the back, I have like a subtle display of the map. And then when I slide it, there's a bit of lag at first, but the system heats up pretty quickly. I have a nice image here of the range as well as where the closest charger is. So for instance, it's telling me I have 85% of battery left, 383 kilometers of range left, and at 7.2 kilometers, there's a quick charger available. That's pretty neat. So when you go in the main menu, well, this is standard Kia stuff. Everything is laid out in small icons. Again, the system responds fairly quickly when it's heated up, but it can lag once in a while. The icons are a bit small, however, but you can also have access to, for instance, climate control settings from this menu. A bit of lag, but a bit more detail if you want to fiddle with the climate control directly from the screen. You got your navigation menu as well, the whole bunch of options there, your map, and the maps are well laid out in the Kia products. They're quick to react. They zoom in and out quite easily. Of course, you can always connect this vehicle to Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and they will connect wirelessly. So the moment that you'll connect your phone, you'll be instantly prompted to install Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. There's a neat valet mode in the EV6. What this does is that, let's say you go to a very expensive place and you don't want the valet to start like using up all your range and beating the snot out of your EV6, you can activate that, and it's really going to limit the amount of power and performance that the valet has access to. It's just going to basically limit everything to parking the car, which is what you want from a valet service. So I want to get back to this EV menu. Another neat feature about the EV6, just like the IONIQ 5, is the V2L technology. That means vehicle to load. In other words, what I can do with this car is power some electronic accessories from the charging port out the rear. I can regulate right here from the infotainment system the charge level percentage after transfer. I can go between 20, 30, 40, all the way to 80%. So everything can be controlled here. This is handy. Let's say you're going out camping with the family and you have some accessories you want to power. You'll plug it on your car, but you can also regulate how much power you're going to give those accessories so you don't run out of battery. It's hard to fault the Kia EV6. I mean, what the Koreans have done with this thing is literally a home run, and it's the same story for its corporate cousin, the IONIQ 5. You just choose the one you prefer. I guess its only flaw is that it's not available right now. If you want to order an EV6, you're going to have to wait at least 1 or almost 2 years This is a big problem with all cars in the industry, especially EVs, due to parts shortages. But the obvious question is, why is this kind of vehicle not coming out from the Japanese car makers? Toyota, Honda, what are they doing? Here we are mid-2022, and this thing still doesn't have serious competition from the Japanese car makers. If anything, the Hyundai Group is in the best position right now to take on Tesla, a car maker, let me remind you, that is selling on average 1 million electric cars each year.